Cameron, if in the Green Party, no problem. What repercussions does an MP suffer if they vote against their party? It's very serious. I mean, the very worst, the example that is sort of like a head on a pike outside the door to make sure it's spiked, to make sure that none of the other MPs ever make this mistake, is Helena Gerges. Thrown out of cabinet, thrown out of caucus, described as what? As coke sniffing? What was it we suspected of her? Call the RCMP, call the ethics commissioner, throw her to the far netherworld, don't let her run again. And the RCMP said there was nothing to investigate, but that was in small print. The ethics commissioner found nothing to investigate. The poor woman stands guilty of one thing only. I mean, I don't know how much of you remember about Helena Gerges. She was married to Rahim Jaffer. That's it. She stands accused of one thing only. She's marrying a jerk. And many of us will identify. And then she sued because her reputation was in tatters, right? And the court said Stephen Harper was exercising royal prerogative. The court can't interfere in that. Oh yeah. And she owes money to the Conservative Party for their lawyers in court when she's trying to defend her reputation. Now that's the Conservative worst case. Bruce Heyer was an NDP member of Parliament, and he's the one who brought forward the climate bill. He quit the NDP caucus because after he did, oh, thank you. This is just water. I mean, it could have been,
Oh, sure.
I mean, that's what Johnny McDowell said it, but yeah, so he actually, yes, but that was water. I'm not complaining. I was glad to have water. Right, Bruce Heyer told his constituents in Thunder Bay, Superior North, that they could count on him to vote to kill the long gun registry. When he made that pledge, he talked to Jack Layton, and Jack said it was okay. And then he voted to kill the long gun registry, as did the other Thunder Bay MP for the NDP, John Rafferty from Thunder Bay Rainy River. And immediately he was, all speaking privileges in the House were pulled, all travel privileges were pulled. He was only allowed to travel between his riding and Ottawa. He couldn't go to take speaking engagements anywhere else. He was pulled from committees. He wasn't, so then in the leadership race, John Rafferty was smart and decided to support Tom Mulcair, and Bruce supported Nathan Cullen. So when Tom Mulcair appointed a shadow cabinet of over 80 members of Parliament, how do you get 80 members of Parliament shadow cabinet? It's pretty impressive. But Bruce Heyer didn't get a shadow cabinet position, although John Rafferty, being smart, having supported Tom Mulcair, got a shadow cabinet position. So it wasn't just about the long gun registry anymore. It's just, you're going to continue to get punished. And it's interesting how little the national media has inquired of Bruce Heyer why he sits as an independent. The NDP caucus actually has, on their voting record, a greater level of party discipline than the Conservative caucus. They vote the way they're told to vote. And Bruce sits, as I mentioned, right next to me, and we chat about many things. But it's outrageous that parties, now the only reason leaders of parties are able to get away with this is a mistake that was made in the Elections Act in the late 60s, and it was the first time that on ballots they put the name of the party next to the name of the candidate. For a long time in Canada, it was just the name of the candidate. That would be great, right? So when they put the name of the party next to the name of the candidate, they decided, well, we're going to have to know that Joe Blow really represents the Liberal Party, or Mary Smith really is a New Democrat, so how do we know that? We'll get the leader to sign their nomination papers. And that, law of unintended consequences. Suddenly, Elections Canada had handed to the leader of every party a really large club, a threat. You don't do what I say, I won't sign your nomination papers. And if you're a sitting MP, that means you know you're not going to run again. If you're a candidate, it keeps you in line during an election. And so really liberating MPs starts with getting rid of that provision of the Elections Act. I have a private member's bill to do that, because it's going to be very critical that we stop having, if I could snap my fingers and eliminate all political parties, and we'd have a system of government where people vote for the person in their community. And And Bruce has some great ideas. Oh, Bruce Heyer has great ideas for democratizing Parliament. One of his ideas is that we should sit in the House in alphabetical order. And he said there wouldn't be all this yelling back and forth if you had to say, you right next to me here, you have no credibility on that, and then sit down again and sit, it's this idiocy that comes from hyper-partisanship that makes it like, I don't know, as I said, a bad Punch and Judy show. Sometimes people call politics a blood sport, but democracy isn't a sport, and Parliament shouldn't be, my team versus your team, and leaders of parties should not have levers that allow them to punish MPs. And that's what we need to really address in the next federal election from coast to coast, so Canadians can have these basic issues of how do we make democracy work in Canada on our minds when we're going to all candidate debates and trying to change the way the other parties behave.